Well, hello there, my dear children of the apocalypse. How are we doing today? Welcome back to 52 Weeks of Self-Improvement, and welcome to the Munchausen Syndrome. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I didn't do a big dig into this one. I really didn't do any analysis. I looked at one singular page, the first page that I could get when I typed in the Munchausen Syndrome into Google. And it described it as a syndrome where people deliberately make themselves sick. From the process of manipulating their actual results, like putting blood into their urine test so that it would look like they have an internal bleeding or some complication. They will deliberately force themselves into bed, into situations where they're being sick. Essentially, they'll fake it till you make it so that they can be sick, which is a very weird one. And I realized that the Munchausen syndrome is just a way for me to associate the thought process of something that I've actually done in the past. I want to tell you a story. Back in high school, this was, the very first year of high school I was in, I was beginning to suffer from migraine headaches. Now, a migraine headache would start for me by first, imagine all the pixels that you're currently watching on the screen just start flickering. And for the next 20 to 30 minutes, you cannot read, you cannot focus, you cannot watch. Essentially, you know that this is the precursor of a just obliterating headache that's about to come your way. And it's a horrible precursor to have. Now, what actually happened is I realized that I could use this as an advantage. And there was one day in particular where I was on the bus, riding to school, and the very first period we had a math exam. Now, I didn't study. I knew I was going to fail. So to evade the failure, what I did was I actually came to the bus stop, I exited the bus, I went over to the side of the road, and I entered the bus going the opposite way. I went back home, essentially putting my tail between my legs and just saying, screw it. I'm not taking the exam because if I don't take it, then I can't fail. I called in sick. I said, I have a migraine. My head hurts. I started actually feeling sorry for myself a little bit. And I noticed in the process of doing that, I actually started to feel a little bit worse. Like, not systematically way worse. It wasn't like I was actually going to get a headache, but it felt a little bit that way. Almost as if my brain was connected to my body and saying, you know what, fine, I'll give you the migraine if you so desire it. The irony that happened is that this math exam was failed by the majority of students, but there was one student missing before the exam could be repeated entirely, which means that I essentially screwed over myself and my entire classroom. And as a result of it, I actually had to redo that exam at the very end of the school year, and I actually risked, a very small risk, but a risk nonetheless, that I could have potentially failed my first year of high school. And it's a memory that I cannot get out of my head, and I know that all of you have stories. In fact, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear what was the story from your childhood, your adulthood, or perhaps recently, where you deliberately called in sick and you weren't. What were the repercussions? What was the karma boomerang that came around? What happened? How did it affect you, your family, your loved ones, your employees, your co-workers, whatever it might be? Because I learned there and then that it's not fun or productive to play around with your health. When you're healthy, when you're going around and about, nothing hurts, nothing aches, when you're feeling on cloud nine, it doesn't matter. But what happens when you're actually sick? When you have a cold, when you're bedridden, when you're coughing, when your nose is runny, when something hurts, when you've broken something, when you've scraped, when you're bleeding. All those instances, you would give anything just to be healthy again. And that's why I find the Munchausen syndrome, as it is, perhaps not as the medical condition, because I'm sure this is a medical term used in the doctor's environment for actually describing somebody who has some sort of disability or whatever, where it's a mental problem, let's say. I'm talking more about the effect that we use on a daily basis, which is similar to a white lie. It's a very tiny lie, seemingly won't hurt anyone, but when you're doing this over and over again, and I think there are people out there that might be abusing their health in this sense to get benefits elsewhere, to get people to feel pity for them, to perhaps get some sort of benefits. I think to those people, what is probably happening on some fundamental level. I do personally believe this 100%. I leave the decision making to you, to each individual, but I think by doing so, they're actually impacting their health. By believing it, by faking it out, by playing it out, I think they're actually impacting their health. Because when I think about fake it till you make it, when we say, acting confident for long enough so you actually become confident, I think the same thing will happen to you if you keep acting that you're sick. If you keep putting yourself in situations where you make yourself believe that you have so much anxiety, so much depression, so much sadness, so much pain, so much sickness, if you keep believing it, I think there's a very high chance that it's going to actually come true. And in order to prevent that, that's why the positive thoughts are so important. That's why last week's video on the law of attraction is so very crucial. Because attraction doesn't define what it's attracting. It could be attracting good, it could be attracting bad, happiness, misery. Think about it, put it into perspective and ask yourself, what am I attracting? Am I attracting stress? Am I attracting misery? Am I attracting love? And ask yourself, what am I giving? Because I wholeheartedly believe that these are cruel decisions with cruel outcomes. And you have to get control of them as early as possible, because your life could improve tenfold, or it could really get catastrophically bad, just like the Munchausen Syndrome. Till next time, take care and keep positive in your mind. Safe flying. I'll catch you in the next one.